Hello, everyone. I am Julianne Meyer. You are watching Own Your Wellness, and you guys are in for a special treat today. We've got an amazing guest who is so thoughtful, so creative, and just so kind. And wait till you meet him. His name is Dr. Ravi Rajaratnam. Welcome to the show. So glad to have you here today.
So excited to be here, Julianne. I was looking forward to it.
Me too, definitely. Ever since we had the opportunity to connect, I've been looking forward to seeing you again. So we're very glad you're here today. I always love to, you've accomplished a lot, and you even have this new book out, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I would love for you to share with us a bit about yourself and your own wellness journey.
Sure. As you mentioned, my name is Ravi Rajaratnam. I'm originally from Malaysia. Came to the U.S. back in 1985 to go to school here, and I've been here ever since. And my wellness journey started when I was a young manager, early on in my career. High flying manager, everything was great. The customers were happy. Everything was on time, within budget, you name it. So my manager casually told me, "Hey, Ravi, why don't you do a 360-degree feedback?" And I had no idea what that was. Eventually, I knew what that was. It's basically getting feedback from your peers, your direct reports, your managers, your business partners, and all that. When the results came back, it's like, oh my God, this is what you thought about me? I was just a driver with total disregard for what was going on in people's life. No matter what it takes, we need to get this done, get this done, get this done. And from that point onwards, I invested into being a better person, being a better manager, a better leader, invested into emotional intelligence and looking at both personal development and professional development. And that's how I've lived my life, and also making sure that I work with my leaders and all the people that I touch. How do you look at the whole person aspect? Right? Because everybody's just driving professional. I got to achieve this. I got to achieve this. And by the time they achieve it, the kids are all grown and left the house. They probably have trouble with their marriage, or they're divorced or separated, right? And you've achieved this, whatever that is, and all for naught, right? So I try to make sure that they're able to have their cake and eat it as well, and making sure that they look at both the personal development and the professional development, the whole person aspect of it.
I love that. Something I can totally relate to is being, because one of my nicknames when I ran a place was the Velvet Hammer. And, I was a real hard ass. I mean, it wasn't really how I wanted to even show up in the world, but it took a toll on me too, eventually. And, I just appreciate, like, here you are, you're kicking butt, you're taking names, doing it. And then you find out, whoa, this is what you think.
Exactly. That was brutal because when I first saw that, I was like, sometimes you have to go through a life-changing event. For me, that was the life-changing event.
Yeah.
And eventually I kind of discovered what my leadership style was. It's essentially a servant leadership, helping
Yeah.
others get to where they need to be. Because as a human being, we are wired to two ways. One is fight, flight, or freeze, and the other one is to grow. That's how we are wired, right? When you're in fight, flight, or freeze, guess what? You're reactive, right?
Yeah.
When you're having a heated argument, you're trying to get out of the conversation, or you want to win, or you might freeze, right? And when that happens, what you're doing is you're shutting down the growth part. So what I teach people, that everyone that I work with, how can you expand the space between stimulus and response? How can you calm down the reactivity and then tap into your creative side? Because the solutions or the answers or the product that comes from the reactivity is going to be not sustainable, not going to be the best. But being more creative in terms of being more empathetic and exploring, why is Julianne saying what she's saying? Let me try to understand, with curiosity. That's what makes a better person, right? But 95% of what we do is based on our subconscious, and that's automatic. So, and I'll get into the book later on why I wrote the book and things like that. But yeah, that was
No,
my wellness journey.
yeah, no, I love that. And I was just thinking too about all those automatic things. Like, people don't realize that, a lot of times there's just automatic even reactions when they think it's because of somebody else, and like they can't control it. And I remember when I started looking at, somebody cutting me off in traffic, for example, because I used to drive a lot, and I would instantly get mad. And, and I realized part of that was fear, because I was afraid that I was going to get hurt. And I
Mm,
thought, okay, that's interesting. And then I was thinking about it like, obviously they didn't do it to me. They were like,
exactly.
let's see how I can upset this lady here. And, and that was interesting to think about too. But then I realized that once I started noticing that this was just an automatic response for me, and I would start to, yell at somebody in my car, I looked at myself and I thought, I'm not even mad. Why am I, it was just so automatic. And I just thought, wow, I don't even actually feel anger. And yet here I am.
Yeah. The
Feeling,
only
and I,
thing I would love to add to that is we don't respond to what happens, but we
Mhm.
respond to the perception of what happened.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly it, And, and it's funny too, because, and I always tell this story, but, when I started to change, what really changed it for me, and I always use this example because it's really simple, and people can relate to it. But I thought about when somebody supposedly, in my mind, wrongs me, when driving, I just think to myself, well, what if they have to go to the bathroom and they just need to get to the bathroom? And then after that, I was like, by all means, you go ahead, because like, please hurry, get to your destination.
Yeah,
And yeah, I'm not angry anymore. So it's like this whole story that I was telling myself in the beginning. So why not change the story?
exactly. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I love the whole idea of it happening for me. I had this mentor that would say, you should always acknowledge and say thank you to those things that trigger you, because it's showing you something in yourself. And I'm curious what your thoughts are of that.
Absolutely. To me, those are the necessary evil to make you a better person,
Hmm.
right? The triggers are there for a reason. They're the lessons, right? You need to thank you, right? Okay, you are my teacher. You're teaching me something. When somebody cuts you off, you're teaching me something. You're teaching me how to be patient, right? You maybe
Hmm.
you're teaching me to slow down because I'm also, speeding up. So always making sure that can you see the gift in any kind of adversity? And if you really dig down, regardless of what happens, you can find the gift, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give you, I'll be a little bit more vulnerable here. Recently, 15 months ago, my brother passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And as devastating as it was, I tried to find the gift in it. And the gift that came out of it is like, one, Ravi, slow down, live in the present, because I was a go, 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 go guy, we need to get this and things like that. Slow down, live in the present, spend time with your family. And the other gift is form as many memories as possible with your family. Those
Yeah.
memories are not for me. It was more for my kids, my wife, and everybody else. Because what's keeping me going is the memories I had with my brother,
Yes. I love
right?
that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
trying
No,
to find a gift.
yeah, that's the thing. It's, I have a similar story. My brother passed away. Oh goodness, it's been 9 years now. Actually, this month, it's been 9 years this month, or in May, I should say, coming up.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's just interesting because it was so painful, obviously. And it was such a blessing too, because it really woke me up, because I was asleep at the wheel of my own life, and it
Mm,
really woke me up. So, his passing really was a gift, even though I didn't like it.
exactly. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. I like that you use that example too, because people are, sometimes they don't realize, like, if you, like you say, if you dig deep enough, you can find a blessing in anything and everything. That what are you learning from this? You don't have to like it.
Exactly. And unfortunately, we typically wait for a life changing event to make a
Mhm.
change.
Exactly.
So everyone that I work with a mentor and coach and lead, I tell them create your own life changing event, right?
Hmm.
To make that change. It's just a lot of it had to do with how we were also brought up as well, which is the topic for later as we get into the book.
Well, I think that that's interesting too, because It always comes back to perception. Everything comes back to perception and how, you view the world. But, and like this whole idea of quantum physics, I mean, not that we're going to get into that because that's like a whole mess of crazy, but quantum physics and the power of thought, how we actually affect things by what we pay attention to, so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At the end of the day, we're all energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. No, that's
So
absolutely
yeah,
fascinating.
because you can say it's like, yeah, I want to be positive and I want to do this and things like that. But if you're not behaving that way and you're not acting that way, you're not
Hmm.
tricking your body to do that, guess what?
Yeah.
It's not going to manifest.
Yeah.
Right.
And, most of the people watching know that I worked in addiction recovery for 6 years or
Mhm.
so. And, all of the people that come into rehab, that's their life changing moment or possibly life changing moment. And it's interesting because, after having to attend so many different A meetings like NA, AA, SA, OA, all the anything that ends with anonymous meetings because of clients and whatnot. I would hear things like I'm a grateful alcoholic, and it took me a long time to figure out what they meant was that if they hadn't hit that bottom, they wouldn't have changed.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
And it all starts with empathy, loving yourself first. Right.
exactly.
That's
Exactly.
that's where it starts. And
Yeah.
forgive yourself, for whatever reason, whatever circumstances. And then once you start from a place of love, that's when everything appears, right? I have this beautiful saying that mentioned to some of my workshops and things like that. I said, the teachings and the teachers appear when the student is ready.
Hmm.
They're always there. They're
Yeah.
always there, but you're blinded, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I work a lot on people as well, on the mindset and making sure you have more of a growth mindset instead of a
Hmm.
fixed mindset. And to kind of open your eyes first. Once I work on your mindset, now I'm going to give you the skill set and behaviors so you
Yeah.
can improve for the better. But they were always there, but you're close minded or
Yeah.
you're blinded to it. So
Yeah, well, your brain can only process so much, so it's kind of like, yeah, it's there, but what is
exactly.
it going to see?
Hmm. Yep.
I love
Yep.
that. So you touched a little bit about, mindset and coaching. I would love for you to share a little bit about how you help people and what you do.
Okay, perfect. So I've been in the corporate world for like almost 30 years. And one of my highs is developing people to see where they were to where they've become. And every time I started working with them, when I kind of peeled the onion to see what their blockers are, or limiting beliefs, or whatever you want to call it, for whatever reason, it always led back to their early childhood. So I started investigating into that more. And what I now do is working with my folks coaching and leadership development is I try to tackle the root level because anybody can lead or manage when things are good. The
Mhm.
true manager appears or true leader appears when it's actually stress time. And
Mhm.
typically it's not beautiful, it's not pretty, right? So what I do is I try to understand why are you behaving the way you are? What's the trigger? It's like the iceberg, right? You only see a little bit of it at the top. You see all the issues under the water. So
Mhm.
I dig deep into what are some of the issues. And then once you understand that, great. Now I'm going to help you build new neural pathways, right?
Mhm.
And normally it starts from a place of empathy. It's not your fault. We were all born for greatness, but somewhere along the line, something happened, right? So once we understand that, now I'm going to help you enhance your mental fitness, right? In terms of making sure that you're more resilient to whatever may come, rather than just giving you another framework. Because if I were to give you a framework for conflict management or relationship building or things like that, it's like, oh my God, how am I going to use this framework for this and things like that? So I try to give you one common operating framework that you can use for any situation. And after that, I start looking at some of the behaviors that you can form to reinforce it because it typically says it takes you 66 days to make a habit be automatic, to be part
Mhm.
of your subconscious. The average is 66. Sometimes it might take longer, sometimes it makes it shorter, and things like that. So that's what you want to do because, like I said, right, a lot of what we do is based on our subconscious. the automatic actions, right? Like driving from point A to point B, like work to home. You
Mm-hmm.
pocket in your backhand and you just got there. You don't know how you got there, but you're talking about something else. You're talking multitasking and things like that. So how can we make this good traits to be part of your automatic reaction, right? And then once you have that, great. Now take it up another notch, take it out another notch, 1% increment, 10% increment
Mm-hmm.
until you see breakthrough, whatever that is, right? Whether it is better wellness, overall well-being, better health, better professional career, better
Mm-hmm.
relationship with your wife and kids, with the community, all of that. So that's my approach. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of coaching. There's a little bit of therapy as well because I go to the root level. And there's
Mm-hmm.
also mentoring because I have been an individual contributor and worked myself to become a C-suite executive. So I can show you one of the steps as well. So it's more of a holistic approach, going at the root level so you don't regress back to where you were before. Yeah.
I love that. And personal development is one of my all-time favorite things to discuss, mindset, all of these sort of things. And I think a lot of people learn a lot of knowledge, but don't apply
Bingo,
what
you
they learn.
absolutely, absolutely. When was the last time you went to a conference or a seminar and things like that? You got all this cool tricks and techniques. Are you still applying it? If you're
Yeah.
not, why not? Because you get back to your busy world. There is no nudges and there's no constant accountability. So that's what I do. I try to make sure that there's accountability built in and
Mhm.
we're constantly following up until it becomes part of your automatic habits. That's
I love
important. So it's sustainable.
I love that. Yes. All right. Well, on that note, it is time for us to go to a commercial. So we're going to be back in just a moment. For those of you who are watching us live, thank you so much for being here. As I mentioned, it is time for us to go to commercial. But when we come back, we're going to get to the root of everything. So we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, everyone. Let's just bring our guest right back on and jump right back into the conversation. I don't want to waste another moment. So during the commercial break, I was thinking about, you mentioned the root cause, and I would love for you to describe, what you discovered and sort of what your book is about, and the culmination of all of that.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So, as I mentioned earlier, every time I work with an individual to figure out what's blocking them to get to the next level and be the best version of themselves, it always led back to their early childhood, whether it is trauma, a broken family, lack of a role model, a variety of reasons.
Mhm.
And so much so, I started investigating what forms that, and it's all to do with belief systems. And then I'll peel the onion again. It's like when our belief systems form. Guess what? During early childhood, specifically between 0 to 5 years old. That's when our brain grows to 90% of the adult size, where neuroplasticity is the highest. That's why when you see a child able to speak multiple languages between that age, because the neurons are getting wired, connected. They're all getting hooked up during that time, and they're just mimicking everything. So I dove deep into what are the early childhood development skills. So besides the motor skills, there are cognitive skills, social and language, social and emotional skills, and language and communication skills. So if you look at that, language and communication is pretty self-explanatory, and then you have social and emotional, and then the cognitive thinking, the cognitive side. And I identified what are all those and how you need to nurture them. And then as I was doing my research, I saw a direct link between these early childhood development skills and what we call the 21st century skills, which
Ah,
are cognitive, intrapersonal skills, and interpersonal skills, right? The interpersonal skills being like teamwork and collaboration and leadership, and the intrapersonal is basically the intellectual openness and things like that. So it's like, whew, great. So what I do now is, as part of my coaching practice, I work with individuals to say, okay, this is before we start the rewiring process, before we rewire your brain, let's look into how you're cognitively wired, right?
mhm.
And then once we understand that, great. Now that you understand, again, going back to the root cause, let's build the new neural pathways as part of the rewiring process. So it takes you to where you need to be, right? So
Mhm.
the book was essentially, a instruction manual for parents and early childcare providers. Because as a parent, we don't get an instruction manual how to raise a child. Right? So what I did was first identify what are the early childhood development skills, and then what are the brain development period in terms of when the different parts of the brain are sensitive to the cognitive and the language and communication and social emotional, and what you as a parent or early childcare provider needs to do to nurture the skill set, mindset, and behaviors during this critical period between 0 to 5. So it's just like bite-sized strategy because we're all so busy right now, right? We need to consume things in bite-size. So it's just simple bite-sized strategy that you can incorporate in your day-to-day interaction with your child. Whether you are reading out loud to them or you're speaking out loud while you're doing something, while you're bathing the child,
Yeah.
just mimicking because they're just waiting to get hooked up. The neurons are getting to get hooked up, right? So they're mimicking everything that they see from the parent. Just like even the bad words. Where'd you get it from? Well, mom and dad said it, right?
Exactly.
So that's what the book is about, and then now I incorporate that as part of my coaching practice as well.
Yeah.
And another compelling reason why I was really, really driven to write this book is when I saw this United Nations statistics where 250 million children, the 250 million children globally under the age of 5 are developmentally delayed. Of course, there's a component down there with the nutrition as well, but
Mhm.
there are other components too, like early childhood development skills. 250 million. And this was pre-COVID,
Oh,
right? Are we good?
that's
The screen's like flickering.
yeah, the screen's funny. You know what we'll do really quick? Oh, we're back. We're back.
Okay.
Yay.
Yeah.
You gotta love that. Every once in a while, weird stuff happens. Anyway, what I'm hearing too is like you can't always necessarily, depending on where you are and the kind of money you have in the world, food might not giving the best food is not always an option. But reading to your child, or, singing with, all these other things that they can do to help their child. I know I'd want to know.
Exactly, exactly. And that's essentially what I did in the book, right? And when I saw the statistic of 250 million children, these were like pre-COVID, guess
Yeah.
what? They're going to have issues later on, right?
Yeah.
They'll eventually end up being my client because you help them with the rewiring process. But no, I'm like, let's get parenting right, right?
Hmm.
These are bite-sized strategies. So as your audience are listening, I'll give away this book for free because I make my money part of coaching and leadership development. But this is a resource that every parent, every grandparent, every early childcare provider should have because it gives you the strategies you need to do and it's scientifically proven. So I made sure that I took the science behind it and I try to make it simple, right? So there was a component down there, it gets a little heavy in terms of the different neurons and the different parts of the brain and things like that. And I did that deliberately to tell you that I didn't cook this up. These are research. So understand that and you'll see the difference, right? And making sure. And then we have 140 million children born globally every year.
Oh,
140
wow.
million children. Yeah, every year we have 150 or 40 million children born, right?
That's a lot of
So
people.
exactly, exactly. So that's my, that was my hobby. That's what my gift to society. I wanted to write that book. And eventually I wanted to write a second book as well, where it's like a storybook, right? Where they can incorporate some of the things. But
Mhm.
Julianne, what the number one toy a parent could have, the best toy a parent can give a child,
Hmm.
guess what? Guess what it is?
No idea. Blocks?
It's themselves.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Role modeling, right?
Yes.
Are you talking to
Yes.
your child? Are you looking at the child's eye? Or are you multitasking, looking at the phone? It's like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you can do that and things like that, right? You simple things. Are you being conscientious? How are you treating others? How are you interacting with others? Right? Are you saying thank you and please when you're interacting people? Things like that.
Hmm.
Just involving them in different activities because, like I said, they're observing everything. Right?
Exactly.
So
Whether they
that's the
remember or not.
best. That's the best toy that every parent can give a child.
I love that. I think too about my childhood and how volatile it was. And, I experienced some things that really have definitely left an impression. So I understand that. Like, yeah, it would have been nice to have both of my parents be present in that way. That would have been, like you said, the best toy, the best gift, the best any of that. Something that I'm compelled to think, I don't know why this, but it comes to mind. And you mentioned about getting to the root of things. And I was thinking about how, if you have a bomb, like an actual bomb, and you're just like, moving the wiring around without knowing what's going, where it started, might not actually really be as effective.
Yeah, I agree. And when I was talking also earlier about some of the bite-sized strategy, I also introduced the concept of something called the 4 C's in my book. And essentially they are curiosity, conscientiousness, critical thinking, and compassion,
Oh, I
right?
love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to get deeper into what they are, curiosity is essentially, having a strong desire, not just a desire to learn and know something. And curiosity is also a catalyst for innovation because it sparks the intrinsic motivation to learn,
Mhm.
experience, and understand the environment and the world. So I would tell parents, I'll tell every individual to be curious. Don't just take things for granted. Do your own research, experiment, because
Mhm.
especially this day where we have everything, the internet and social media and things like that, don't take it just for granted. Use the
Yeah.
information, experience it. You make your own deduction from that rather than just taking blindly. So curiosity is the first C, right? The
Mhm.
second C is conscientiousness. And what did that mean? It includes a high level of thoughtfulness, good impulse control, and are you having behaviors that are goal directed, modeling some of the behaviors, right?
Mhm.
Then you get into critical thinking. To me, I say this is the connective tissue or the silent C that basically binds the cognitive, language and communication, and social and emotional skills to allow them to function holistically, right?
Yeah.
And in tune with each other. Because the quality of everything that we do is determined by the quality of our thinking.
Amen.
Yeah. So the foundation of critical thinking, it is the intellectual discipline of processing information that is gathered from or generated from various means as a
Mhm.
guide to belief and action. That's essentially what critical thinking is, not to just think critically. So
Yeah.
I'll be more than happy to talk more to any of your audience if they want to get more into that. And the
Um,
final C, so go ahead.
no, no, I'm going to pop up your website too so people can reach out to you. I've had it up a couple times, but anyway,
Uh,
please continue.
uh, the final C is compassion.
Mm,
And what do I mean by that? It is the sympathetic consciousness of others' distress
mhm.
together with the desire to alleviate that,
I
right?
love that.
And in order to do that, you need to have sound cognitive skills to bring awareness needed to recognize that there is suffering or unease, and
Mhm.
then it may make you feel emotionally moved by the plight of the others, and not only trying to understand how that might feel, but also being empathetic and attempt to take action to relieve that suffering. So that's
That's
the
it.
compassion part. So that's the four C's that I go through in the book as well, and how you can practice that as you're interacting with your child during the day-to-day activities. You don't need any expensive toys. You don't need
Yeah.
an iPad. The iPad is not a babysitter. So
I think that's a very interesting point too, because, I think about when I grew up versus now, and I don't think that kids nowadays have the same sort of advantages that I had when I was growing up because we went and played outdoors. We went and we were creative and inventive in our games, and we used our imaginations, and we did all those types of things. Whereas now, like you said, it's like an iPad. It's TV. It's where
yeah,
you just sit there like a slug, and there's no creativity on your part. So yeah.
exactly. So sadly, we've also become a slave to technology, right? Rather
Yeah.
than using what's available now that the information is available, how can we take that and get advance even further? And I
Yeah.
start with the education system, right? We're still teaching people, our kids in an archaic model, not to,
Mhm.
knock on the education system or teachers and things like that. I love them. But at the same time, what they're teaching and memorization is not the way to go, right?
No.
And giving them problems with no answers is not the way to go because that's not real life, right? So why should I listen to a teacher or a lecturer to pontificate when I can get all that information in my iPhone, right?
Yeah.
So how could we, now that information is available, how can we turn that around? Make it more
Mhm.
experiential, like you said, right? You have this
Yeah.
case study, like, okay, how can we solve this problem, or what are the different problems? What can other problems arise from by going through this solution path and things like that? That's what we need to teach because that's
Yeah.
real life, right?
Exactly. Or, teaching how to handle negative emotions. What do you do when you're sad? How do you handle your anger? Things like that. Those are things that we should be teaching.
You're absolutely right. And that's a portion in my book that I talk about that as well. Rather
Yeah.
than suppressing that emotions, like don't cry,
Yeah.
don't do that. Don't jump in that puddle of water, you know.
Yeah.
I'd say, go ahead, experiment. Okay, it's
Yeah.
fine. It's okay to be sad or mad or angry, but let's
Mhm.
understand why we sad. Emotion is a natural part. So how do we handle it? What do you
Yeah.
need to do to overcome that? Give them strategies, even like when they're doing homework, and if they don't do good, the parent might say, try harder.
Yeah.
How am I going to try harder if you have not shown me the strategies, the techniques, the path of how to try harder, right? Because sometimes we
Exactly.
just do parenting part time, like you said. We take the easy button, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think about how many times I've been told try harder. Yeah, okay. It's like back in the day, with dictionaries, I'm asking how to spell something, and my teacher would say, "Look it up," and I'm like, "How am I supposed to look it up if I don't know how to spell it?" I literally, like psychology. How I'm never gonna find psychology in the dictionary.
Yes, yes. But now with Chat GPT, you can go on down there and type in, tell me, explain Scientology, although I'm a 5-year-old, and it'll
Yeah,
give you that example. It'll tell you
yeah,
exactly what that
exactly.
you should be able to understand. But people are threatened by that. Rather than being threatened by that, let's see how we can take the information and
Yeah.
even advance ourselves further, right?
Well, yeah, I think of it as, it was a little like Chat GPT and all that, it was a little scary for me, only because I haven't learned it. And, that's really the only reason why. But then I was thinking, that could save me so much time. What can I use that energy, that brain power, that energy, that time? What could I use that for instead? It's
Exactly,
like, what
exactly.
a blessing.
Exactly. There's of
Yeah, of
course there's the ethical component part of it, right? There need to be like a
course.
watchdog to watch what's going on in there. But other than that,
Yeah.
it has a lot of benefits to your
Yeah,
point.
no, I mean, it's like anything. Are you going to use it, or is it going to use you? And that's the same thing with our brain, though, like our very
Hmm.
own brain. Are we being led around by, our emotions and, that are, just automatic because of, how we've been programmed and wired? Or are we using our brain for what it's for? And yeah, it's all so fascinating to me.
You hit on something else as well because we are either driven by fear or pulled by love, right?
Exactly.
That whole thing about are you a master versus a slave, right? And every one of us have different emotions within us, right? And things that
Mhm.
sabotages our life, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing that we need to understand. What are some of the things that's sabotaging our life? You know,
Mhm.
and it could be simple things like judging, right? We're
Yeah.
constantly judging us, someone else, other circumstances, right? So if you can recognize that, rather than like, okay, instead of judging, let me try to understand why is this person behaving or doing or whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So understanding that, like in my case, two of my biggest saboteurs was hyperachiever and being restless.
Yeah. I get
And
that.
that served me well throughout my career.
Mhm.
But the real question is at what cost?
Mhm.
Did I neglect my family? Did I neglect my health? Things like that. So everything
Exactly.
in moderation, right? So you need to recognize that and make
Yeah.
sure that you have a balance. Again, I know people talk about work-life balance. Yeah, there's no such thing as work-life balance, right? Because
There is
by the time you commute and put, number of hours you put in work, there's more time there than the rest of the life. So what I
yeah.
tell people is more like work-life harmony, right?
Amen. Yes.
Right? You need to make sure that there are sometimes you have to do overtime at work, sometimes you need to do overtime at home, right? You need
Exactly.
to find that harmony, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And
You
making
are
sure
saying
that,
my word.
yeah,
Harmony is my word. That is what I'm like. I hate that word balance. I'm like, it implies that you're going to fall off, and it makes it more nervous. But harmony.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And then their personal well-being is so important because all these accolades and wealth, all that doesn't mean anything if you don't have your health,
exactly. Exactly.
right?
And yeah, how are you even, and bringing it back to like the success factor, how are you going to be successful if you're sick? How are you going to be successful if, you're coming from a place of fear, if you're coming from, a place of lack, if you're, yeah. And
Yeah. And how are you going to mentor and lead others if you're not coming from a place that's healthy?
exactly,
Right?
exactly. And people feel it, that, like you said, we're all energy. So
Exactly. And
people feel,
what's sad is a lot of it, even what I have in my book, is
hmm,
common sense.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know why they call it common sense, because it
Right?
might be known, but it's not common.
Yeah. So my goal was to take all this complicated thing and put it in a way that's easy
Yeah.
for you to digest. It's a little bit more academic because I did that on purpose. And then,
Hmm.
by the way, here's the blueprint. Use it.
Love that. Yeah. I love that. On that note, it is time for us to go to one more commercial, or commercial break. So we're going to be back in just a minute. And I said hello to everybody who is watching us live. Now I'm saying hello to everybody who is watching us on demand. Thank you for being here. When we come back from commercial break, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into ways that we can, possibly be of service and do some rewiring and all the fun stuff that we've been sort of, dancing around a little bit. So we'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
When drug or alcohol addiction take over, things begin to disappear. Your friends, your family, and eventually, you. Recommended by Dr. Phil, New Method Wellness can help get your life back with individualized treatment plans for dual diagnosis clients. New Method Wellness provides the most highly credentialed treatment in a safe and welcome environment. Call New Method Wellness for your free consultation and ask about our national accreditations. Together, we can put the pieces back together.
I just have to say, I kind of really like the music of the Last Achieve TV promo because it makes me dance a little bit in my seat. So I hope you guys enjoy it too. Let's bring back our special guest. Welcome back. I am so happy that you're here today. I'm glad that we are having this conversation. I just love how powerful you are in the way that you speak and yet still soft-spoken. So it's like, the Velvet Hammer, but in a really positive way. A powerful message without a verbal slap.
Interesting you said that because by nature, I'm an introvert. And because of my leadership role, I had to force myself to become an extrovert, right? So I consider myself really more of an ambivert, right?
Yeah.
So I can flip between both sides. But again, my mom always told me you get more with honey than vinegar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you do, for sure. We've talked a little bit about your book, and I want to make sure that we pop up your website and talk about that too. So people can find your book here, correct? And then
Yes.
Also, what else can they find when they come to your website?
They have different resources down there from the CDC to other resources for parent and early child care providers in terms of some of the strategies and some of the research that I use in my book. If they want to take a deeper dive and geek out into what is cognitive versus what is, language and communication and social and emotional and things like that. So there's a variety of things down there. I also have a portion down there where you can see what my coaching practice is about. And you got all my social media handles there as well. And I also provide a free complimentary 30-minute consultation on any topic, whether it's for your personal coaching or this early childcare development. I'll be happy to discuss that with you. So everything is there on my website. Yes.
I love that. I love that. And, something that just comes across to me is that you have a service, a heart of service, a heart of gold. So, for those that are watching, I know he means it. So just want to reiterate that. But anyway, we were talking, about, childhood development and early childhood and how, if we can start with the root, then there isn't so much rewiring later. And, something that I was thinking about was, if most of this happens, before the age of 5, I think about the terrible twos and all this and how, kids are like, why? And we sort of beat the curiosity out of them because we don't want to keep answering questions. So that might be, is that something that you address in your book as well, or?
Absolutely. Because that's something you want to enhance and you want to promote and nurture that. Because I told you earlier, curiosity is the spark for innovation, right? Be curious, because every parent watching down right now say 10x the child's curiosity, right? As annoying it could be, right? That will pay dividends. So that's definitely one. And another common question that I have is like, my child is already beyond the 5 years old. So did I miss the boat? Like, no, it's a little bit more hard work. Remember the 66 days to form the new habit, right?
Yeah.
So 0 to 5 is prime time. That's when you want to, put everything you can put in there. But after that, you can always nurture that as well. Now that you have this knowledge, plus you can also use it for your own personal development, right? It's going to be difficult sometimes, right? Because you're going back to your early childhood, right?
Yeah.
And
No, I think that's a beautiful way to put it, because you can teach an old dog new tricks, but if you can teach a puppy tricks, it's easier.
Exactly. But you got to start somewhere, regardless. Make sure you take action, right?
Exactly.
But the first step,
that.
like, of course, even if you go to all these different AA groups and things like that, it's the admitting there's a fault, right? And,
Yeah.
and
There's
then
an
trying to see what we
acknowledgement.
do. Exactly. So acknowledge. And at the same time, forgive yourself, again, coming from a place of empathy, right? And that's another important thing. Let's say you went on this journey of self-improvement or wellness, right? And if it takes 66 days to form that habit, you fell off the wagon after 3 days or 4 days or 1 month, or whatever. Rather than beating yourself up, make sure that you're more discerning, right? It's like, okay, Ravi, what is it that you did to fall off track, right?
Yeah.
And then now that we know that, how can we mitigate that so we don't do that again? And let's get on track. But what do we normally do? We beat ourselves up, we get mad and things like that. And then it just spirals downwards into the reactivity. So how can we get more into something I call sage, right? And then be more creative and coming from a place of empathy and trying to say, okay, this is what happened and this is what we can do to get back on track. Even when you're in a relationship with somebody else as well, right? Don't be critical of that other person. And it's like, rather than, empathize with that person.
Yeah.
Like, honey, you did this wrong. Great. What was the lessons learned? What do we need to do to get better? Let's go forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, myself included, not so much now, but it's like, I'll do something, I'll fall off the habit wagon, and I would beat myself up like you were saying, but I also didn't want to take a look at it because I was so busy, shaming myself for my failure, that I didn't want to look at my failure instead of like, okay, well, if I just took a look and readjusted, then things would have been fine. So
exactly readjusting and also celebrating some of the early success. And the other key thing is also pausing, right? And what I mean by that is like an example would be the race car drivers. You see the race car going around the track, it still has to stop to get the tires changed. Otherwise, guess what? You're gonna have a burnout. right?
Yes.
So the wellness journey needs to start with some pauses as well, right? It's like,
Mhm.
are you taking care of that? Reflection is so important, right? What went well? What could I do better? And things like that.
Yeah.
So rather than on the go, because sometimes people can be obsessed. Yeah, I got to do this 66 days. I got to do this. Like, no, it's too rigid.
Yeah.
Again, you're being reactive. You're not coming from a place of empathy again.
Yeah, exactly. No, and it's not like once you get to the 66 days, all of a sudden the hard work's over. So it's like, you really gotta change
Exactly.
your mindset and grow into who you're gonna be moving forward.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
important you said that because the buzzword now is the 21st century skills that I talked to you about earlier.
Mhm.
And then if you looked at it, it was basically, I know I went through it pretty quickly. I was said cognitive, intrapersonal, interpersonal. Uh, Let me give a little bit more detail of what that means, right? In terms of cognitive, it basically is the three main areas of cognitive processes and strategies,
Mhm.
knowledge, and creativity. And if you can look at it, there's skills that are associated with acquiring knowledge and
Mhm.
processing information through thought, such as reasoning, intuition, perception, imagination, problem solving, active listening, and written expression. Even active
Mhm.
listening, I tell my kids when they're growing up, there's a reason why God gave you 2 ears and one mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah, seek first to understand before being understood. That's a famous quote by Stephen Covey, right? So
Mhm.
that's cognitive side, right? So if you understand all that, okay, how can I practice those attributes to enhance my cognitive skills, right?
Mhm.
And then the intrapersonal skills is all about intellectual openness. That's to do with the work ethic and being conscientious and having good self-awareness and adaptability and self-development and things like that. Basically, to help control your attitudes and inner
Mhm.
process. And they are the interpersonal skills are the one that form the foundation for relationship building and helps you navigate your interpersonal relationship, which is the next one because the interpersonal skills is basically teamwork, collaboration, leadership, primarily behaviors and tactics that kind of helps you interact and communicate with us with the different scenarios across the globe because now we're such
Mhm.
a global economy. So, and I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, when I saw the connection between the early childhood development skills of cognitive language and communication, social and emotional, to this 21st century skills. So, yes, and I backed it up with science. So please use it.
Take a look. Yes. Well, we are almost out of time. We only have like 1 minute left. So, is there any quick last thoughts that you'd love to share with the audience before we end?
Yes, if you are a parent or an early child care provider, love your child unconditionally. Why do I say that? You can never spoil the child. Why do I say that? Starting back to what I said originally, the way we are wired is fight, flight, or freeze, or
Mhm.
grow. And in order for you to grow, you need to be in a place where it's safe. By comforting them and loving them and holding them and things like that, that's where they'll feel safe and they'll grow. Otherwise, you're shutting down the growth part. And if they're stressed, guess what? They're not growing as well as they should be. And the
Exactly.
best toy a parent can have for a child is
Themselves.
yay!
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and you have been so informative and fun to listen to. So, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. And everyone, that is all the time that we have for today. So, enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you again on Monday.